everybody, I'm Tim, and today we're going to the ends of the earth. You're watching Cigars Daily. Get a hell of a lot more out of this video when you join the community on Cigars Daily Plus and when you watch it on Rumble. Listen, before I start this video, I need to come clean about something. I'm going through a thing with this series. This is the secret language of cigars. And I really wanted to just talk about the different terms we use in the world of cigars. And personally, what I really want to get down to is seed varietals, because at heart, I am really a giant cigar nerd. I just think it's really, this stuff is cool. The Criollo and the Corojo. And anyway, I decided to go through this whole thing. Now, this is my fourth video where we're talking about growing regions and areas of the world. And I still have to get through plant primings and all kinds of stuff like sizes, where Terrence informed me I have to talk about Lanceros, which I don't want to do. And all of that to do a thorough job of talking through this thing. And I'm just sort of bleeding on you for a minute because this has now become an undertaking, but I am deadly committed to it. And so I am here to take you guys today through other growing countries in the world. There are so many of them. And this is the fascinating thing about cigars, because if you haven't been into cigars for very long, you might think that premium cigars really primarily are just from Honduras, Nicaragua, or the Dominican Republic. And they really are. I mean, primarily, those are our places for especially rolling cigars. Each one of those places has a cigar rolling capital, but there's so many other parts of the world where we grow leaf that goes into premium cigars. It's called black air-cured tobacco, and those are what I want to talk about today. Because as we've sort of discussed through this series, it is the soil, it is the amount of sunlight, it is the moisture in the air. Hell, a lot of little details create these different characteristics of leaf in every different growing region in a country and in lots of countries around the world. And so today we're taking Honduras, Nicaragua, and the DR and putting them over here. And we're just going to talk about countries where we grow leaf. This is stuff you're going to see in blending information for different cigars, and why I want to take you through it. And I'm going to be showing you this map right here of the world and where some of these countries pop up. But I want you to see, at the very outset here, the places where we grow this stuff all pretty much live in between two certain zones. Take a look here. There's one that's the Tropic of Cancer. The other is the Tropic of Capricorn. And this is near the equator, where our planet happens to be particularly warm and wet. It's what tobacco really likes. It likes areas that are warm and wet. And so these countries tend to be places where we find a lot of this stuff grown. And coincidentally, there are some other places in the world along the equator where we don't really do a lot of growing, and I'm not really sure why. I can't answer that question for you. Probably somebody could. Steve Saka. You know what? Ask him. Anyway, I want to dive in. So with no further ado, these are other cigar growing countries. Actually, there's just a little bit of ado here. This is not a completely exhaustive list. There are conceivably other places where we grow leaf. These are just the main ones, but we can also break these down into three categories. There are places that specialize in wrapper leaf. There are also some countries where you're not growing a lot of wrapper, you're growing more binder and filler. And then there are other places that are more boutique-y or old world type cigar growing places. So we're going to break them up into those three categories. The first one is the wrapper kings. These are countries where we grow mostly wrapper leaf. Now, we will grow binder and we will grow filler. Not every leaf that grows on the plant is destined to be a wrapper leaf. But the first one on the list is the country of Ecuador. This is something you see all too commonly today in blending information, especially if we're talking about a Connecticut cigar. See, back in the day, we used to grow, and when I say back in the day, I mean 50 to 100 years ago, okay? A long time ago, we used to grow most of our Connecticut shade wrapper leaf here in the United States, in the Connecticut River Valley. And we're going to talk about that in a few. But in recent decades, we've really taken to growing a lot of Connecticut leaf in the country of Ecuador. And that means taking seeds from Connecticut, bringing them down to Ecuador and growing them there. And the reason that you see this is because In the country of Ecuador, there is an unusually high amount of cloud coverage throughout the year. It's like 200 plus days of cloud coverage per year. It's some very high amount. So unlike Connecticut shade crops where they'll erect shades over the crops, literally cover them with cheesecloth so that they get shade, in Ecuador you don't have to do any of that. You can basically grow the stuff. It grows under the cloud cover, and it makes the country of Ecuador perfect for growing Connecticut wrapper. The only thing to know about the country of Ecuador is that when you get a wrapper leaf from there, it's technically not referred to as Connecticut shade. You'll refer to it as Connecticut or Ecuador Connecticut, and that is for the dyed-in-the-wool cigar snobby cigar nerd people who are like, oh, it's not a Connecticut shade, it's a Connecticut Ecuador. It's grown under cloud cover, which to me, it counts as shade, but truthfully, that is the big difference. Connecticut shade is grown outside of Ecuador, and from Ecuador, you're getting Ecuador, Connecticut. And a great example of a project that uses wrapper leaf from Ecuador is basically every Connecticut cigar that's come out for the last 10 years. I mean, with extremely limited exceptions, but to be maybe a little bit more specific, Perdomo's brand new Ecuador Connecticut Legacy cigar uses a wrapper leaf from that country. While Perdomo grows a lot of their own leaf, to find a quality Connecticut wrapper leaf, they turn to the country of Ecuador. And now we're gonna move a little bit north to El Mexico. Mexico is coincidentally a colossal cigar growing country, especially in the San Andreas region where you get, it's going to shock you, Mexican San Andreas leaf. And a lot of this gets used as wrapper leaf today. Hell, if you're looking at a new project from a cigar maker that happens to be bold, you'll find Mexican San Andreas Oscuro is very common. It's up there with Connecticut broadleaf. Those are sort of the two leading types of leaf that you find being put on dark Maduro cigars these days. Mexico happens to be a prime place for growers to grow the leaf where they can age it like their tequila. Dark, sweet, and a little bit dangerous. And most of that Mexican leaf ends up making its way down to Honduras and Nicaragua and the DR to be put on cigars. As with most of these other countries, you see, these are not countries, again, where you're seeing a lot of rolling happening, mostly growing, although there are some cigar factories in Mexico, just very few of them. The number one thing you can get from Mexico is that Mexican San Andreas leaf that makes its way to the factory of a cigar, probably in Nicaragua, that you've already heard of. A great example of this is the My Father Fonseca Mexico. It's the newest Fonseca cigar and one of the newest My Father cigars. This one uses a wrapper leaf from that San Andreas region of Mexico, and it brings out this really powerful sweetness that comes in conjunction with a really strong, powerful flavor. Our next country is one that's special to me. I love this. I'm going to talk about Brazil, okay? Brazil it's a little further south. It almost seems like it's further south than should be reasonable to do this stuff, but apparently Brazil is a place where growing leaf works incredibly well. And these days, I have come to know Brazil as being a country that produces leaf that has a really bright flavor. Typically, Brazilian leaf, Brazilian Mata Fina leaf, has got this naturally sweet, almost fruity or dried fruits or citrus sweetness that's very native to the leaf. And so when I find cigars that have Brazilian leaf in them, I always get a little bit more excited than I do with the typical new cigar release, because to me, Brazilian means bright flavor. Now, to the rest of the world, they don't think about Brazil as a place where tobacco is grown at all. They think about Brazil as the place where, the Brazilian steakhouse is born out of, and somebody comes by with a meat skewer and slices it off on your plate. And I don't think that those people are wrong. That is one of the best things about Brazil, hands down. But when it comes to the actual blending of cigars with Brazilian leaf, this is a powerful thing. There have been so many cigars that feature Brazilian tobaccos out there that are truly inspiring projects. Probably one of the most notable of them all. Hi, I'm sitting at my desk editing this video right now, and I need to take responsibility for what I'm about to do. I'm about to refer to the CAO Brasilia as the CAO Brazil. It's a small thing, but considering how long I've been doing this, it seems like something that I definitely should have known better about. Calling cigars by the wrong name, it's a rookie move. I know all the right names, and I know how to pronounce them, because it's what I do for a living. So this feels like a big miss. And I just want to apologize to CAO fans everywhere who are definitely getting ready to put in the comments, you called it the Brazil instead of the Brasilia. It's 2 letters. I left them out, and I'm sorry to CAO and to the cigar nerds and fans of the Brasilia. Okay, on with the show. Is the CAO Brazil? The CAO Brazil is I think probably the token chocolate flavor notes tasting cigar in the whole industry. I don't think there's another blend that you'd point to and say like this is a good example of a cigar that has a chocolate tasting note in it. That's the sort of the prime one. But also it does feature that Brazilian leaf. In fact, it's so popular that CAO has also come out with a cigar called the BX3, meaning Brazilian times 3, a blend that uses Brazilian leaf in the wrapper, the binder, and through the filler. And so really popular place to grow leaf, but also a place where they grow a tremendous amount of wrapper. Now there's one other big wrapper producing country out there, and it's one that I think it's misrepresented a little bit because of the seed varietal that comes from there. I want to talk about Cameroon, but not just the Cameroon wrapper leaf. I want to talk about Cameroon, Africa. You see, these days, when you see that a cigar has a Cameroon wrapper on it, you might note that that Cameroon wrapper tends to be a little rough, maybe a little rugged, a toothy. It's got the little toothy bumps on it, tends to have some veins running through it. I mean, it's almost a rugged seeming leaf, but at the same time, today, a lot of Cameroon leaf is grown outside of Africa. So I want to talk about Cameroon as a place, not as a seed varietal, because the actual wrapper leaf that comes out of Cameroon, Africa is really special. If you want to hear a crazy method for coming up with the leaf that goes into a cigar, Cameroon is the best example I have heard thus far. Unlike a lot of the other cigar growing countries where it's a process of agriculture, in Cameroon, they do things a little bit different. It's not a farmer with a bunch of land and tracts of fields where he grows his crops and rotates them. No, out of Cameroon, you get a lot of your wrapper leaf from the Mirafel family. This is something that I learned a tremendous amount lately about from Ernesto Perez Carrillo from Casa Carrillo Cigars. He was telling me about their new Endure that uses a real Mirafel Cameroon wrapper leaf. You see, the Mirafels are in Africa. They buy a tremendous amount of the tobacco that's grown there, but they don't just buy it from farmers. The people who are growing this are largely nomads. They travel around Africa, and wherever they plop down, that's where they're going to start growing. They're sort of traveling looking for good soil, and when they find the right soil, they grow their leaf there. Now, when they harvest this leaf, the Mirafels will come and buy a lot of it from them. And what Ernesto told me is that when the Mirafels buy all this leaf from these nomads in Cameroon, they'll sort it all out to come up with what of that leaf qualifies as authentic Cameroon Mirafel wrapper leaf. It ends up being about a 15% yield. 15% is an incredibly small yield, which is one of the reasons Cameroon, authentic African Cameroon wrapper leaf, is such a prized wrapper leaf on cigars today. Also happens to be one of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of cigar makers start to take Cameroon seeds and grow them in places like Honduras and Nicaragua, because you can put it in a field and keep an eye on it rather than wait for, tribes to come back from their nomadic journey and say, here's the leaf we grew, figure out which parts of it you can use on premium cigars. That being said, the tradition of getting tobacco from Cameroon and that the Mirafel family has is a very old tradition and a standard in cigars. It's so standard that this is the kind of wrapper that Arturo Fuente uses on the Arturo Fuente Hemingway series. So there you have it. Outside of our main cigar rolling countries, those are 4 countries where we do a lot of wrapper leaf, among other things. But then there's even other spaces. Like this next category is countries where we grow a lot of filler leaf and even like boutique type projects. So those are 4 countries that cover just wrapper leaf, primarily wrapper leaf growing. Now I want to talk about a few countries where we specialize in sort of underrated filler. It doesn't get used a lot, and when it does, it's very special, or sort of boutique growing operations. And the first one is Colombia. Colombia is widely known as the coffee capital of the world. That, and I think they make very nice neckties there, I've heard. So I haven't tried one on, but I hear they're great. But coffee from Colombia is it's like the bee's knees. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants it. However, when we grow dark air-cured tobacco for premium cigars down there, it seems to do incredibly well. There are a few projects that use this leaf. It's a leaf that comes with a characteristic that's incredibly smooth and has almost a grassiness to it. But again, we're growing coffee there that's incredibly vibrant in flavor. It only makes sense to go grow leaf there as well. I'm shocked when I see this pop up in the blending information for projects like the Chillin' Moose Shady Moose, which is like a total economy brand, but still has a 5-country blend. When you think boutique-y growing spots like Colombia, where we don't have huge farms for tobacco, it's interesting to see what cigars it ends up actually making its way into. And considering the necktie situation down there, something that seems like it's pretty interesting and risky to go about. Now for a growing region that I get asked about a lot, even though it's really super tiny, and that's Costa Rica. By God, if you want to talk about a place where the growing scene is boutique, like small batch, like there's not a ton of it going on, Costa Rica is that spot. It's sort of your like farm to table type growing situation. But that being said, the soil in Costa Rica is not bad. It grows this incredibly earthy, very clean tasting tobacco. It gets used in super select projects. In fact, my one example of this is Zingotitas, which is a brand that nobody's heard of, at least not yet, but it does have this like really like smooth and aged, because Zingotitas are aged, but it does have this smooth and very earthy profile to each of the different blends. Costa Rica is a country that you may hear more in blends in the upcoming years, but at least right now as I'm making this video, if you want to make a boutique blend, Costa Rica's not a bad place to start. And the next of our very underrated boutique-y cigar growing countries is Indonesia, of all places. Yeah, for sure. Like Indonesia is a place that to me is very akin to what I told you with Africa. In the same way that they take the Cameroon seed from Africa and grow it in other countries, in Indonesia, they're taking their Sumatra seed and growing that outside of Indonesia in Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic. And some of this has to do with the fact that Indonesia is like on the other side of the planet. But in Sumatra seed is being widely utilized, and I'm going to cover that in another video. Nonetheless, when you grow leaf in the country of Indonesia, what you get is an earthy and very neutral leaf that gets used a lot in filler, but also quite a bit in binder leaves. Now, an example of a project that uses Indonesian leaf from Indonesia would be the Macanudo Cafe. This is like a long-standing industry standard cigar that uses, I think, a wrapper leaf from Java, Indonesia. But probably the biggest contribution that Indonesia makes to the cigar game is their Indonesian Sumatra leaf. Now, the other interesting fact about Indonesia, which I didn't even want to say because of how crazy everybody and everything is right now, the big reason that we grow in Indonesia is because of Dutch colonizers who went there and started growing the leaf. It just happens to be one of the parts of colonizing Indonesia that stuck around and now accounts for a part of their economy, and they grow leaf there. Is that good or bad? I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask the Indonesians. Let them be the judge of that. Now we'll dig into a whole other category of countries where growing happens. We've talked about some countries where we grow primarily wrapper. We've talked about some boutique countries and some filler leaf grown there, maybe binder leaf. Now we've got some countries where legitimately it's like old world style growing operations. These are places where we're growing specialty leaf today, and you might be shocked at some of the countries you hear here. And the first one is Italy. If you've cruised around the premium cigar world, you maybe have seen that, CAO has a project called the Italia, which uses leaf from the country of Italy. It's probably the only large cigar I'm aware of that uses leaf from Italy. Very famously, though, Toscano gets like their whole rolling operation is in Italy. They've got a very long-standing, historic, hundreds years long tradition for making fire-cured cigars in Italy, and uses a lot. Coincidentally, they use Italian tobacco and they use tobacco from Kentucky for doing this. But Italian tobacco seems to be like a big winner. It's like one of the, I think, underrated, unsung heroes of the cigar world. A place that you don't think about when you think about cigars, but also has a colossal culture and business doing it. Now, the next country is one that I think you're probably going to think I'm ridiculous for calling like old world or specialty leaf. But that's the good old US of A, baby. The United States is not a big place for growing dark air-cured tobacco, the stuff that we use in premium cigars. That being said, we do some of it here. However, not nearly as much as we did like 100 to 300 years ago. Like during those times, tobacco was one of the biggest industries in America. I mean, colossal. So much so that if you go to the Capitol building on Capitol Hill and you walk through the halls of Congress, this is a picture that I got from John Simons from Warfighter, who went out there recently. You can walk through the halls of Congress, and here you can see these pillars. At the top of these pillars are carved tobacco leaves into the original pillars, because this was such a huge part of our culture in America. Today, after a 50-year war on tobacco from our government against the tobacco industry, it's become small and quite specialty. See, the United States was an important place for growing cigars, and for growing leaf anyway. This is where we get the terms Connecticut shade and Connecticut broadleaf, because we used to grow this stuff all through the Connecticut River Valley, a part of the United States that spans about 5 different states. We would grow on thousands or tens of thousands of acres the Connecticut shade and broadleaf leaf for a number of reasons, one of them being handmade cigars. Today we don't do a whole ton of it, and so that's why it seems very special when it pops up in a cigar. One very recent project that utilizes this leaf is Southern Draw's Morning Glory. It's the cigar I'm holding here. This uses a wrapper leaf, a Connecticut shade wrapper leaf from the United States of America. Once again, I think these days we're all kind of cognizant of when something's made in America. Southern Draw cigars are not. They're made in Nicaragua. But it does seem to give a hint toward that when you've got leaf in the blend that does come from the United States, be it Connecticut shade or Connecticut broadleaf. I should also say this, or I'm going to hear about it from some of the viewers. There is a Pennsylvania broadleaf as well that is a different varietal. It's a special varietal. I happen to use it in the Diesel Desert Walker cigar. It's a very good varietal, does a spectacular job, can't knock it at all. Pennsylvania broadleaf, I mentioned it, there you go. Now, heavens to Betsy, I've got 3 pages worth of bullet points on this video, and I'll tell you, there are a handful of other countries we grow in, so I'm just going to list them very briefly so that you know what they are. The Philippines, Peru, Panama, and Cuba. There you go, I mentioned them. And if I don't say something about Cuba, I think it's going to be an issue for people, so I'll say this. Cuba is another place where we grow a lot of leaf. These days, Cuban cigars account for a lot of the cigars, I should say a decreasing number of the cigars for the rest of the world's population. It used to be that Cuban cigars were the rest of the world's cigars. Everything we've talked about in this whole series accounts for the cigars that are sold in America, and Cuban cigars was sort of the rest of the world. These days, Cuban cigars have seen quite a bit of challenge from these other cigar growing parts of the world. Cigar companies from Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic are branching out all over the globe, and I mean unbelievably quickly, while Cuba is losing shelf space in cigar shops abroad. And so if you live in Europe, if you live in Canada, Australia, if you live in Asia, hell, if you live just about anywhere on the planet, you can look forward to hearing about some of the brands and blends that you've heard about on this channel or on other channels on social media or seen in places like Cigar Aficionado. I think that's an incredibly good thing. That being said, Cuba's not a country that we study here a ton in the United States because we still have a full embargo on Cuba. You cannot buy or sell Cuban cigars in the United States. It's a crime. It's not a crime to have them, though. It just means that Cuba's not a country we pay a tremendous amount of attention to, and depending on your perception or opinion of Cuba, you may or may not care. And so there you have it. A bunch of other countries for cigar making in the world. And this is really this is when you look in the blending information, this is for you to know sort of what you're getting yourself into. Is the leaf in the wrapper, binder, and filler, is that coming entirely from Nicaragua, making it a Nicaraguan Puro? Did they branch out when they made a blend from Nicaragua to Honduras and the Dominican Republic? Or have we done something a little more specialized? like using a filler from Colombia or a wrapper leaf from somewhere like Cameroon, Africa, or Java, Indonesia? I mean, is there something in this blend more than the standard set of leaves that you find in a blend? This officially, by the way, also ends my videos on growing areas and growing regions. So as we continue this whole series on the secret language of cigars, I'm going to get into some other really cool stuff. And thank you so much for joining me for this series. Make sure you subscribe right here on the channel to follow along. And if you want to get more out of this video, get into it on Rumble and our own community on Cigars Daily Plus. Thanks again for watching. This is Tim signing off for Cigars Daily, and I will see you in the comments.